Hey everyone, it's your friend and colleague, Dr. Jesse Green, and welcome back to the Savvy Dentist podcast. If you're like me, you've probably been guilty of doing too much, falling into the trap of doing dentistry by day and trying to run your business by night, and ultimately running into that wonderful experience called burnout, or not so wonderful experience. To talk about how to overcome that and indeed how to avoid it, I'm joined by one of the world's foremost productivity experts, the world's most efficient man, Ari Meisel. Welcome to the program. How are you, mate?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on tonight.
Well, it's wonderful to have you here, and it's a little after 10:30 in the evening in New Jersey. So thank you so much for making the time. I'm really interested to understand more about your work. You've been referred to me many, many times by many different people as a foremost thinker in this space. And I wanted to ask you how you found your way into this line of work. I know in the early days, perhaps things weren't as peaceful and calm, and the art of doing less maybe wasn't as integrated into your life as it is now. But what was the journey that took you on this course?
Yeah, so I basically got sick, is what happened. So it's a typical story, I feel like, in a lot of ways, where people have their sort of wake up time or wake up moment. I was working in construction in real estate development, and I was young. I was 20 when I started that project. When I was 23, I finished the project and I got diagnosed with Crohn's disease.
Mm.
As I'm sure you're aware, Crohn's is a chronic inflammatory condition. It is considered to be incurable. I got really sick. And the sort of tangential story is I was actually able to overcome the illness after about 2 years. And I went up to do a TEDx talk about that and ended up helping hundreds of other people overcome the illness. And 20 years later, I'm symptom free, medicine free, pain free. What ultimately was the biggest shift in my life because of that was that I went from working 18 hours a day to struggling to get an hour of work done a given day. So when I was presented with this very real restriction of what would you do if you only work an hour a day, it forced me to start experimenting with productivity in a way that I had not before. And it really, there are no systems, and there were no systems at the time out there that were focused on that issue. There's all sorts of great productivity systems out there, but a lot of them are really about getting the most out of your day, organizing sort of. None of them really deal with that issue of like, what if you had no time? And I find that to be such an interesting question that I even ask myself often today, these days. What would I do with that extreme restriction? I always have found that restrictions create the best innovation. So I was presented with this situation, and very quickly you realize that if you only have an hour a day to get things done, it's not really at that point a question of what would you do. It's really what wouldn't you do? And if the things that you wouldn't do still need to get done, then who or what is going to do them for you? So this framework of optimize, automate, and outsource everything in my life and my business began to take shape. And I started writing blog posts about it. And then I started teaching classes in person in New York, which helped me develop my original manuscript for my first book, which then got published. And then I started speaking all around the world, consulting and coaching, and ended up on the Jesse Green Show.
Very kind of you. I want to just talk a little bit more generally for a moment, Ari, because the hustle culture is often celebrated, and the thought of doing more and more is an easy trap to fall into. I've certainly fallen into it several times. So I should know better, and I still fall into it again and again. I wanted to ask, why is it that we are genetically, well, maybe not genetically programmed, but maybe conditioned to want to do more and more? What is it that forces us down that path of overwork, adding more to the plate without ever subtracting?
I mean, we're all just psychological messes, right? I mean, I think that we're a lot of times, particularly entrepreneurs, I feel like are working out their psychological issues on their companies and unfortunately sometimes on their teams. I think there's a lot of different things that go into it. So there's a statistic that I always love to share, which is an old statistic from the Foundation for Teaching Entrepreneurship. It was a youth entrepreneurship thing here in the States. It's still around. And they found that by and large, the majority of his young entrepreneurs, the entrepreneurs who started the company before they got out of high school, and I had three. I started when I was 12. The majority of those people came from households where the father was physically or emotionally absent and the mother was overbearing. And that would very accurately describe my upbringing, an only child in that setting. And so I think you can sort of connect the dots, right? You're trying to achieve enough to get someone's attention, right, and get validation there, while at the same time trying to get this freedom from some sort of overbearing control. And that just drives you that way, right? And you'll just grab anything that you can in some cases without a lot of focus, which sometimes works and sometimes doesn't. And also, sometimes that's sustainable for a lot longer for other people than it is for other people. So I think that's part of it. There's some psychological like need there that we're trying to fulfill, some itch that we need to scratch. I think that social media is probably responsible for a lot of that because people are showing very fake lifestyles that other people feel like they want and should have, and the only way to get that is money. And then I think that one of the biggest things, maybe the biggest thing, is that I think people often conflate productivity with effectiveness. And so I never seek productivity. I'm always seeking effectiveness. And the difference, right, is productivity is producing more. Efficiency is producing more with less, but effectiveness is producing or doing the right things. And if our goal is to have more impact, which I think it should be, that's a very different guiding light than I want to have a bigger house.
So the follow-up question from that is, how do you determine what are the right things? In a sea of choice, in a sea of hundreds of shiny objects all competing for your attention, do you have a matrix which you run ideas through or decision-making framework around what's the right thing right now?
So the interesting thing that I think comes along with some of those psychological challenges is that it's very difficult for some people, and it was difficult for me for a long time to really understand what your core sense of self is. Right? And
So we're getting to the meaty stuff now, right?
yeah, well, so without getting into too much of like my personal sort of upbringing and all that stuff, a lot of times you end up as a child, I think, and also as entrepreneurs, like you end up being this sort of chameleon, right? You kind of have to fit whatever's in the room and who you're with. And it's not necessarily like denigrating yourself in a way. It's just really like you're with these kind of people, you act this way. You're with these kind of people, you act this way. And it becomes so natural that in some cases you kind of forget like what's really driving you at your core. And for me personally, I'm 42 years old. It took me a very, very long time to figure that out. I think I probably figured that out in the last 5 years, what is truly driving me. And without knowing what that is, a lot of times we will go for the next thing, we will grab for the next thing, and we will do what we think we should be doing, which is just burying our head in work. There's an expression that is unfortunately far too common in the whole hustle culture, which I can't stand, which is heads down. I don't know if people use that in Australia. Oh, I've been heads down. It's like such a crazy concept for me that like that's the excuse that like you're so focused on this one thing that you're basically missing out on the rest of your life. And what's the point?
Yeah, it's a really interesting thing, actually. And on that note, all right, if you figured it out roughly like 37 or however old you were, you're probably a decade earlier than I did, mate. So it took me a long time, but it's really interesting. But there is, I think for everyone listening, there is that internal drive. There is some sort of force. I described as the invisible hand up the back pushing me along. And it took me a long time to realize what that invisible hand was. And to the point about heads down, I think it really is a real shame because ultimately we're on this planet for a speck of time in the greater scheme of things. And if we spend that moment, and it really is just a fleeting moment, working on something, ignoring the things that are most important, whether it's our health, our family, or whatever, all for the sake of this thing, it is quite a tragedy. I wanted to then ask if we can accept this hustle culture, which I despise as well. But I should also tell you, I was once a champion of the hustle culture and I've had to reevaluate and think, this is ridiculous. And I probably just got swept up in the movement. I know probably 10 years ago, 15 years ago, there was a real push for hustle, hustle, hustle. I can outwork anyone. And I'm not afraid of hard work, but I don't want to be working on the wrong thing more than I need to be, right? So I don't mind hard work, but I just want to be smart about it. I wanted to ask then, why do we resist the art of doing less? What is it that we are afraid of? Because academically, rationally, it makes perfect sense to do less. And yet emotionally, it's a much harder jump to make. I wanted to ask why that might be.
I'll give you a story that I think illustrates this really well. Yeah. So I've been doing this for a long time. I would say that I feel like I am a very successful person. We are not into very material things as a family, just in general. Never have been. So I drive a Kia minivan, which I think is the cheapest minivan on the market. It also happens to be the largest inside, which is important because I have 5 children. But I don't wear a watch. Like we don't have. It's just not who we are. It's not what we spend money on. So I was at Costco with my wife several months ago, and Costco is an expensive experience for us because, again, we have a large family. And we were checking out and we are putting the things in the cart. And my wife looked at me and she said, "Hey, are we doing okay with money?" And I was like, "Yeah, why? What do you mean?" And she said, "Well, I never see you work." And oh, yeah, well, that's kind of the point, right? Like, that's how it's designed. But it was really funny. And it was an interesting thing because I was like, well, I guess it's working, right? The less doing thing is working. But also, I don't want it to create uncertainty. And also, I guess I should be sharing more. So I started telling her more now when I sign up with clients and things like that. And then consequently, my 9-year-old was explaining to somebody else what I do for a living. And she told them that I'm an EMT, what you would call a paramedic. I was like, I thought I was so proud. That's what she thinks I am. I'm a volunteer EMT. I do it once a week. And it's something I'm very passionate about, but it's definitely not my career. So it's like saying my daddy's a firefighter. Like I'm like, all right, I'll take that. That's better than telling someone like my dad's a business coach. You know, what does that even mean? So the point of all that is like for a lot of people, that would be a terrible situation, right? My wife's worried because she doesn't think I work. Like, well, what am I doing then, right? And like my kid thinks I'm, so to me, that was the greatest thing ever. It's like, I'm the perfect success of my business where my wife doesn't think I'm working at all, but yet we have this lifestyle and I spend a small amount of time working on the business during the day. And my daughter thinks that I just save people's lives. That's great. Like, I'm good,
Superhero right there.
Right. High five. But for a lot of people, that doesn't feel like enough. And that's because society, for a lot of people, says that's not enough, right? You got to have the card, you got to have the watch, and you got to have the cold plunge, $30,000. None of that stuff means anything for me. I got recognized by somebody like once at an airport for my book, and they're like, "Your book changed my life." And I was like, "That's amazing. Thank you." Like, this is not very unexpected. So again, all that to say, if you're truly following your passion, right, and you're doing something because it's in line with your course itself, then there is no outside validation that means anything or matters at all. And I'm not trying to get like too philosophical, but it's true. Somebody who's inventing the next, like the cold fusion or like a teleporter, like they don't care, right, what the other people think. There's that poster that I've seen a few times where there's a lion, and it's like the lion doesn't concern themselves with the opinion of the sheep. Whereas somebody and this is a bad example because I think COVID changes quite a bit, but you have the people who will stay working in the office because the coworkers were staying working in the office, so they want to seem like they were lazy and going home. And also, the last thing I'll say about that is that we as human beings are really good at digging faster when we need to. Like, oh, I just got to get like 1 more minute out of this, 2 more pages, like just dig harder. It's a lot harder to stop and say like, let me get up for a second and look around and see how I can actually do this better.
It's a really interesting conversation. The hedonic treadmill is something that I think a lot of people kind of fall prey to: the car, the watch, the house, the whatever. And it's really interesting. I've never been particularly concerned with material things. I've been very concerned with financial well-being and safety and choice and flexibility and all those sorts of things. But it's really interesting to me, like you, I've never really kind of aspired to a Rolex or whatever. And I'm not trying to denigrate anyone who does aspire to those things. That's totally fine. It's a choice. But I made a post on Instagram yesterday, actually, and it's quite topical that we speak about this. And the post or the quote was something along the lines of, driving a Porsche isn't the flex you think it is if you have to keep turning up to work tomorrow to make the payments, right? And at that point, you don't own the Porsche, it owns you. And I think that's probably something that keeps people on that treadmill going forever and ever, just trying to upgrade their lifestyle. Then, I've got a Porsche, but now my neighbour's got a Maserati. So do I upgrade to a Ferrari? Or where does that end? And does it ever end for those people that are caught up in that?
Yeah, at the end of bankruptcy court, that's where it ends.
Yeah.
There's a sort of like another deeper psychological fallacy that comes up, which is what's called the liberty paradox. There's a positive liberty and a negative liberty. So what a lot of people are actually seeking, or what they think they're seeking, is a negative liberty. So it's a freedom from. right? So it's a freedom from the 9 to 5, or the freedom from the grind, or freedom from the debt, whatever you want to be, but it's a freedom from, where ultimately what we really should be seeking, and what I believe I've achieved and what I help people achieve, is freedom to, right? Positively, you have the freedom to do this. And what that means is, in my case, for a lot of the people I work with, my system is called the Replaceable Founder. We want to make people as replaceable as possible. And one of the benefits of that is that you have the freedom to leave the business if you choose to do so, because the business will continue to thrive and grow in your absence. And while you're away, learning and growing, you can bring those contributions back to the business when you choose to. So this idea of like freedom to is really important. And I think that Hidani said about what people are getting really stuck in is the freedom from.
Let's talk about the Replaceable Founder at the moment, because I know you've written a book by that same title, and you've written many books. The Replaceable Founder is something, again, that really resonates with me. I've been very lucky to build a great team around me who take care of most of the stuff that I don't want to do, and I'm lucky to sit here and have conversations with you and other people like you whose company I enjoy and who I get great stimulation from. I wanted to talk a little bit about your process for becoming replaceable. And again, one of the things that I found for me personally that was a struggle, Aaron, I don't know if other people struggle with this, but this sense of identity as well, and how that for me was something I really needed to shift and change before I could replace myself. I wondered if we could talk a little bit about identity, but then get into how to replace yourself.
So I see this more the case for men, honestly, is that we tend to intermingle what we do as our value, right? And like who we are,
Yeah.
right? So, and again, I know this is like a very American thing, right? To like ask, what do you do? And people say, I'm a dentist, right? Or I'm an architect, whatever. I got into this habit through a friend of mine named Clay A. Bear, who does this thing called The Perfect Introduction. He's very talented. And he helped me come up with this. So basically, for years and years, when people ask me what I do, my answer is I help entrepreneurs become more replaceable, right? That's what I do. It's not who I am. It's just what I do. And in a lot of ways, what my identity has become for me is I am a maker and a fixer. Right. So I'm a woodworker.
Yep.
I'm an EMT. I help people with their businesses and their inefficiencies and fixing those things. There's a Jewish philosophy which is called tikkun olam, which means repair the world. And that is sort of the big driving force. I'm always trying to repair things, repair the world. I think far too often people conflate their identity with their profession, which really is not. I would say, as an dentist, you're probably a fixer as well, right? And this is actually a really important one for people to know, is that there are different levels of the way that we think through what we do and what we offer the world and what our mindsets are. And so I don't know if you have a specialty or not, but I've met dentists before, because I've actually done a lot of work with dentists for some reason over the years. There are the dentists that say, I'm a dentist. And then there are the people who say, like, I give people their smiles and their confidence back, like that kind of thing. And that's a very different driving force. That's what you think you do. You make people feel good about themselves.
It's really interesting. I'll tell you a little quick story. Well, it was a while ago now. My youngest daughter had some friends over at the house, and my wife is a dentist as well. Dentists marry each other, mate. It's a thing. It keeps us out of the general population. It's a social service, right? So my wife's a dentist, and my daughter is introducing her friend to my wife and I. And she said, "Oh, this is my mum, Miranda. She's a dentist. And this is my dad, Jesse. He used to be a dentist, right?" And it was real. I was like, "Oh, like it was like someone had kind of extracted a little bit of my soul," as she said. I was like, "What do you mean? I'm still a dentist." And it's interesting, though I don't practice anymore, and though I do other things, I still had this identity thing as being a dentist. And when it was challenged so directly like that, I found it actually a bit confronting, and I had to go away and do a little bit of quiet reflection on that and think about, hang on, why did that impact me the way that it did? Why did I react in that manner? And you're right. I realized that I was tying my sense of self to what I do rather than, or what I did, indeed. And it was bizarre. So I wanted to talk about.
I have a pilot license. I've had a pilot license since I was 15, but I'm not a pilot.
Yeah, really. Tell me about that. How did that identity? Okay. Is it because you haven't flown for a while, or is it because?
No, I mean, like, I wouldn't identify myself as a pilot, but I can still fly a plane. Right.
Oh, there you go. I suppose I don't identify myself as a car driver, do I?
Right. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't identify myself as a connoisseur of bacon and eggs, and I love bacon and eggs or coffee or whatever. But anyway, I wanted to talk a little bit about, though, becoming replaceable as the founder, because a lot of people will be listening to this and going, well, that sounds really great. And I think the positive and negative liberty thing I think is really important, because I think the freedom to, as you said, as opposed to the freedom from, I think is a really important distinction. Do you feel that before people seek to replace themselves, they need to get clarity about what they're seeking freedom to? Is that a
No,
necessary first step or not really?
no, not necessarily, because it really is more of a mindset. Because the freedom to means that you can leave whatever you're doing now. And you can leave what you're doing now because it doesn't own you, or you can leave what you're doing now because it will be fine without you, which is important. Right? It's an important distinction. The idea of the replaceable founder is that we want to make everybody in the business as replaceable as possible so that they can be replaced up, not out, right? And to do that, what we need to do is create systems and processes that replace the things that we all do well, because the 80-20 rule really plays in here. There's 80% of the things that you're doing a given day that somebody else or something else, especially now something else, can do. So why wouldn't you free yourself up to then focus on that 20% that really you are uniquely suited for and probably enjoy doing the best? And unfortunately, in a lot of businesses, what you see is that the entrepreneur that starts the business is not necessarily the one that can grow it to $1 million in revenue, the one that can grow it to $10 million in revenue. And it's very rare to see somebody that can grow it to 10 million and be that same person that can grow it to 100. Right? You just don't see that a lot. So it's amazing how many times I've had these conversations with entrepreneurs who run their companies and be like, you might need to hire a CEO. It's like, what do you mean? It's my company. Like, yeah, that's fine. And you can keep it your company. But if you wanted to grow to this other scale, which if you don't, that's totally fine. But you're not that person. I had a client years ago who had a information marketing company. They were selling all sorts of products online. They're all digital products. And he was creating most of them. And he was a really gifted copywriter. And he was a French guy. And he was really good. And he was struggling with running the company. He kept saying to me, like, I need to hire a copywriter to replace me in the copywriting so I can focus on growing the business and building the business. He's like, and I just can't find any of these copywriters that are any good. And I was like, this is so obvious. Like, why wouldn't you be the copywriter and just hire a CEO? And he was like, had
Yeah.
never thought that. Like, the idea had never crossed his mind.
How did he go with that? Because again, I know some dentists would probably struggle with the idea because they might feel like I'm the owner of the business, therefore I have to be top of the pecking order, so to speak. And
Yeah.
being told what to do in my own company might be confronting. How did that go and how does it go?
I would say usually more often than not it goes well, actually, because I've
Yep.
gotten really good at having that conversation.
Okay.
But sometimes I have to have that conversation 2 or 3 or 17 times to make it stick. But I mean, again, not to like keep this too like on the nose about dental stuff, for example. So my top 6 teeth are veneers.
Yep.
I broke these 2 teeth on a bottle when I was 15. And the dentist that did it, that fixed them, is I believe he's like one of the top people in the world. He just happened to be a family friend, and he did it. And I remember the time like he absolutely does not run his business at all. He's a periodontist, or
Yep.
no, yeah, prosthet. He just likes making artistic, amazing looking teeth and doesn't want to deal with any of their stuff. And that was great. And it's like, and I don't want to diminish it, but it's almost like you want to be the technician, you want to be working with your hands, you want to do that thing. That's okay. Be the freaking best at that thing. And then you can have somebody else run it because you're that good.
Yeah. Look, again, we've got clients in that situation as well where they're some of the most skillful clinicians you'll ever see, and that what they can do with their hands just defies belief, candidly. And they're horrible at team management or whatever it is, right? And that's not their skill set. So therefore, play to your strengths and do what you're uniquely suited to. And your framework, I think, was outsource, automate, and what was the other one?
Optimize, automate.
Optimize. Thank you. So optimize, automate, and outsource. So I think, is that where that framework comes into that?
Yes. But I also want to speak to one thing that you said too there, which is a really important one. This is a fascinating one for me. There is all this really great research that I've discovered that working with your hands and deep focused work is like so important for our souls. And it cuts through ADHD, it cuts through focus issues, like the ability to work with your hands, which not all of us get to do, is this unbelievable thing. And so if you have somebody, and this obviously not everybody gets to do that, but if you have somebody who does that and then they don't get to do it, that's a really big problem for them. And it's a very hard thing to manage. So like, I don't have ADHD. I've actually been checked for this, like most entrepreneurs do, but I definitely can like focus on 1,000 things at the same time. During the pandemic, I got into woodworking, and it was the first time in my life that I could do something for 3 hours without even thinking about it, with like no goal in sight. I could whittle on something or make something for 3 hours and then throw it out at the end because I had just practiced the skill. And that concept was so nuts to me. But the idea of being able to work with your hands is really important.
So talk about flow state for a second as well, because it sounds like you're in flow state there. Let's talk a little bit about flow. And I know you've used working with your hands as a prime example, and the need for those people who do like to work with their hands to get that opportunity to do so. How important is flow, or where does flow tie into doing less?
That's huge. So I actually refer to it, well, not well. So flow is flow. One of the things that I talk about a lot is something called peak time. Every person has a different peak time, and peak time is a roughly 90-minute period in the day where you are 2 to 100 times more effective than any other time. The measurement there, but effectiveness is basically you are more able to drop into a flow state than any other time of the day. And I actually devised a way of determining what your flow state or what your peak time is probably about 8 years ago now. And when you figure out what it is, and sometimes for a lot of people it's very surprising when it is, and you protect that time and you try to use that time for your best and highest work, and then you spider off of that to figure out time for other things. The circadian rhythm stuff is fascinating about like when people do things other than others. So my peak time is between 10 and noon, which is great. That's a very convenient time. And my highest and best work is coaching and content creation. So that's what I would try to do then. But I've seen people with peak times at 4 in the morning, at 7 o'clock at night. And you can't, at least in my experience, you really can do a lot to change it. It's just sort of like in you and who you are. But when you start working around that, it's amazing. And then when you figure out, if you have a team and you figure out their peak times, when you don't schedule that ridiculous Monday morning huddle that intersects with two people's peak times, you see team productivity go up too. So flow state is real and very important.
Okay. When you adopt this approach of less doing, what's on the other side of that? What's the payoff?
I have 5 children, right? So I have a 13-year-old. Yeah, you just end up having lots of sex. That's what happens.
I was just gonna say, is that the less doing and more of that?
So I have a 13-year-old, two twin 12-year-olds, a 9-year-old, and a 2-year-old. And we have no help in our house. We don't have a maid. We don't have a cook. We don't have a nanny. I take the kids to school every single morning. I pick them up every single day. I've never missed a soccer game that was local. Sometimes now the kids have to go an hour away for a soccer game, and we're okay with sending them with someone else at that point. But I never have to choose right, between this or that. The majority of the work that I do is done asynchronously, right? The opposite of what we're doing now. So all of my coaching is done asynchronously. I use an app called Carbon where I exchange voice messages. So I have clients all over the world, including in Australia. And well, where are you in Australia? I didn't even get to ask you.
I'm in Canberra. Do you know where Canberra is?
Yeah.
Okay, you're probably one of a handful. One of a handful, yeah. So it's the capital, as you probably know.
Yeah, of course. Yes. It's a good trivia thing, actually. Everyone thinks it's Sydney, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's a bit like, what's the capital of California? Everyone's going to say LA.
Yeah. Yeah. So I actually have a client in Perth right now,
Okay.
which I know is at the other end of the island.
Yep.
But I'm able to work with those people because it's asynchronous, right? So someone can send me a message at 10 o'clock in the morning and I can listen to it at 10 o'clock at night if I want to, or during my peak time. So much of what I do is not asynchronously. So again, I never have to choose. And one of my rules in general is because I get asked to be involved in all sorts of things. And I always tell people, like, if you are asking me to get involved and it's 100% asynchronous, no problem. Yeah, you got it. Yes, I can tell you yes right now. If you need live time from me, that's a different conversation. So as a result, I would say I have a very fulfilling life. So I have my 5 children. I am the vice president for our local rescue squad where I actively serve as an EMT in our community. I've been doing that for about 15 years anyway. I love that. But one night a week, I do an overnight shift from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. And then I have my vice presidential duties during the day. I am the vice chair of the Princeton, New Jersey Municipal Committee on Affordable Housing, Racial, Economic, and Social Equity. I'm on the board of our local Jewish Center. I'm on the board of our local Democratic organization. And I think there might be, and I'm planning on running for mayor in 3 years. So I can,
Wow.
right. So I can do these things and still have a very successful business that affords the lifestyle that we want. We never have to think about when or not when. And again, we don't spend extravagantly, but if we want to take a vacation, we can do that. If we want to buy some nice piece of furniture, we can do that. And yeah, I mean, and I'm here talking to you at 11:15 at night and feeling good.
Yeah.
So
So what I'm hearing is on the other side of this, once you actually adopt and integrate the less doing methodology, it sounds like there's greater peace for a start. It sounds like there's greater choice and flexibility. It sounds like there's more options for you to do things that you might otherwise not have the opportunity to do. All sounds really positive. Is there any downside?
people don't think you're working all.
Your wife goes, "Are we okay for money?" every now and then, right?
I'm trying to think of something because I don't want to be like, no, there's no downside. That would be like foolish, I think, to say that. I'm sure that I've given up on opportunities or I've missed out on opportunities because of it, but I guess there were never opportunities that really mattered to me so much. Everyone has to be better at saying no. It's too easy to say yes to everything.
So, Ari, just if we were to come up with a couple of practical steps then for people who want to replace themselves as a founder, what is the first place to start looking, or what's the first thing to start thinking about? What's that look like?
So it really breaks down into three main areas, like there's one from each, right? So the communications, project management, and processes. So those are the three main areas that I look at in different businesses. Communication is probably 80% of the battle. So I've already told you what the first one is, and it's asynchronous communication.
Asynchronous.
Yeah, that is, if there was ever a silver bullet when it came to productivity, it would be asynchronous communication. And this is an interesting one because it challenges a lot of people in a weird way who have, it's not so much the hustle culture, but it's just business culture where it's like, oh, we have to have a meeting. We got to sit down and talk this out. It's not true. You don't have to have the sales meetings. You don't have to, like, I do all my sales asynchronous, and not everybody can do that necessarily. Obviously, if you're a doctor or a dentist, like you have to be in the chair with people, but everything else, you don't have to have the staff meetings. You don't have to have the vendor conversations. You can do it asynchronously, which means that you're allowing people to communicate at their best because it's when they're most able. Same for you. You can process information and then answer it later. So asynchronous communication, and everybody right now in your business, tomorrow you could decide like, hey, this meeting and this meeting, I'm not going to do that live anymore. We're going to do that asynchronously. It will change your life and your business overnight. And then you just keep going and chipping away. And you start to, what you end up doing is you start to become protective of your time. And that is what is so important. And then ultimately protective of your attention. But people are not protective enough of their time. The second one is project management. So there's also different project management tools out there, Asana, Trello, Airtable, all these different ones. I don't necessarily care about the tool, but what I truly believe is that a Kanban style of project management is the only one that works for the human brain. That's where you have multiple phases. You can do this with a whiteboard with post-it notes as you want. I personally like using Trello or Airtable, depending on how complex the organization is. But we need to do those things. And I would say that at least half the businesses that I walk into have absolutely no project management tool at all. Someone's got a notebook they bring to a meeting and they're like, who's doing this, who's doing that? And what that leads to is a lack of transparency and a need for micromanagement because nobody knows what's going on ever. And then the third one is processes. To truly become replaceable, we have to document processes. And documenting processes the right way, that's how we start to optimize, automate, and outsource and see those opportunities. How can we bring AI into this? How can we bring Zapier? How can we outsource it to a VA, whatever it might be? And the big one here is that most businesses, a lot of businesses don't have project management. 90% of businesses don't have processes documented at all. And some very big businesses, I would say, which is nuts.
Really?
Oh,
That
yeah.
surprises me.
Crazy. So what I always like to do when I used to give like more talks in person, I'd say, how many of you have documented processes in your business? And usually about 50% of the room would raise their hand. And I'd say, okay, now of those that raise their hand, how many of you feel like everybody in your company knows where they are? And there was like half. And I was like, all right. And then of those, how many of you update those and test those processes regularly. And it would be like one person, maybe. There's usually like a binder on someone's back wall that has processes in it that nobody knows about.
Yeah. And even if they do, they don't follow them.
Right. So we need to document processes better, and we need to have them in a process, like a process setting, like process street or trainual or all these things, which are designed not only to help you create the processes, but actually to run them. So the real quick hack there is that what a lot of people will do is they will show someone a process, say, all right, now, or they'll write it down, which is even worse. And then you go do it now. And we have all these shortcuts in our brains that we don't know are there, and we don't explain them. So then we're setting somebody up for failure. So the better way to do it is show somebody the process and then have them write it out, right? So you write what you saw. Now I want you to take that and give it to a third person, ideally, and have them run through it.
Yeah.
Never going to work, ever. But what happens is they get to the second step and it doesn't work. And you say, okay, well, that's because of this. Let's fix that. And they get to the fifth. And I was like, I don't see the thing that you're talking about. It's like, oh, right. Because I'm an admin. You're a yes. Let me fix that. And then we get down to the last thing and it says, all right, now give this to Roger in accounting. And they're like, Roger quit 6 months ago. What are you talking about? And we can fix it. And you end up with a process that is bulletproof.
Yeah. So one question about processes, if I can. One of the things I notice as dentists, we tend to be really detail-oriented people. And there's almost a desire to document everything, right? This is how to go to the bathroom kind of thing. What's the right degree, in your opinion, of documentation? Is it the core processes, the things that actually move the business forward? Or what, like, because you could document how to take the mail out. You could document all manner of things. What's the appropriate level of documentation?
That's a great question. There are 5 main categories that I would say processes fall into. And so we've got lead generation, lead nurture, conversion, which is the sales process, right? Delivery, the delivery of actual service, and then retention, resell, upsell, right? That last part. So every process in your business pretty much can fall into one of those, I would say, except take out the trash maybe. But you might be able to put that under delivery. And then you try to look at which one you were the weakest at, and you focus on that one first. And it's usually pretty easy to tell. I mean, you can definitely put some data to that, but like, oh, our lead generation sucks. Okay, so then we have to start doing more marketing and more podcast interviews and whatnot. Or we're generating leads, but then they're not doing anything. We're not nurturing them. So now we need a newsletter, we need postcards, we need this. Conversion, the sales process sucks, right? So like you can start to see where you need to focus your efforts, and I would do that. But to really answer your question, there's nothing wrong with documenting all of those things. Yes, we should definitely start with core processes and the things that are maybe the most complex in some ways.
Yeah.
But getting in that mindset of documenting everything is fine, because even if you document how to go to the bathroom, what you're supposed to do with that is then optimize, automate, outsource. So then you get to the point where it's like, all right, well, on optimization, we don't necessarily need these 6 steps in the 17-step process for going to the bathroom, but now we have it, and there you go. But honestly, a good process for like cleaning the bathroom, that's an important one.
Yeah, 100%. Ari, you've been really generous with your time, and I'm very conscious of the hour of the evening is coming up to 11:30 p.m. So, ladies and gents, I'd really encourage you to head across to Ari's website, and you can go to lessdoing.com, or you can go to talktoari.com, find out more about what he does. I think this is a really important topic, and grab the books, read the books, especially The Replaceable Founder, and dive into that, and you'll find yourself in a wonderful world of exploration, discovery, and hopefully application as well, because ultimately to learn and to not do is a little bit fraught. So let's take action on what we're learning. But please do go and explore the resources that Ari has there, because they will change your life. They will change your life in lots of ways that I don't think you can really imagine just yet. So Ari, any thoughts or comments about where to start with those resources?
Just head to lessdoing.com. It'll sort of guide you through what you should be focusing on based on where you're at in your life and business right now.
Perfect. All right. Thank you once again for making the time this evening for you, today for me. The good news is you're a day behind us. I think you're still on Thursday. So the good news, Friday comes around okay. So I can let you know that that's going to be all right, mate. Just in case you're stressing out. Anyway, on that cheery note, once again, you've been really good fun to talk to, mate, and very generous with your time and expertise. So I'm very grateful.
Thank you so much for having me.
Hey everyone, it's Jesse here. I hope you enjoyed that episode of the podcast. If you're looking for some more tools, some more insights, some more inspiration to help you create a practice that you love, as well as a life that you love? Well, head across to savvydentist.com and check out all the goodies that we have there waiting for you right now.